Representative Kruger sent us a request related to unemployment insurance. We have received a letter from the federal government as of yesterday. Just for the purposes of the committee's work today, the letter has been with us for more than a day now, but what I would suggest is we asked Director Ashcroft to be prepared to talk us through the letter. She and her staff have spent time with it in the last day and have been working, as we know, on this issue, communicating regularly with the federal government, as well as following the Blue Ribbon Commission from last year. So I think our plan for today would be to have Director Ashcroft bring us up to speed. I think we should, as the requester, as a member of the committee, we would hear from Representative Kruger, and I think we'll open up to committee discussion, and then we'll plan to take it up at another meeting in the future. So that's the plan. Yes, Senator Kate.
Thank you. I think we've all been waiting to finally hear from the federal government on this, and it has been many, many moons. I haven't had, it's 9 pages long. I haven't had a chance to read it. I don't see how we can, I don't know if fellow committee members share that, if they didn't get a chance to look at it last night. I'd like to have digested it myself before we start even discussing it, Madam Chair. And I'm not trying to delay our committee's work on this very important issue. But I'd like a chance to think through the report, which is 9 single-spaced pages, before we take up this topic again. It's the classic case of it's been on the back burner, and I can't remember most of what we've discussed. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Senator Kate. I'll just, as a reminder, what I just said, I'm looking for Director Ashcroft to talk us through. I've read it twice in the past 36 hours. And I'm interested in the director describing her perspective on the letter, having staff having reviewed it, and then certainly we will give plenty of time and plan to take this up at a future meeting so all committee members will have time to digest it on their own, come up with additional questions or areas of concern. And I think as a matter of course, as we would with any member of the committee who brought a request forward, it's appropriate for us to hear from Representative Kruger, since this has been again on our agenda for months. Yes, Senator Burns.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Senator Cates' sentiments. I haven't looked at this letter. Before somebody walks me through it, I would prefer to be able to read it, digest it myself, certainly before we have any type of substantive discussion about it. And that sounds like that's where we're headed. We're going to have a substantive discussion. So I agree. I certainly wasn't prepared for this. Not at all. There was a lot of things on my mind, but this wasn't one of them up until this moment. So I prefer that we wait.
Thank you, Senator Burns. Yes, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have read the letter at 3:30 this morning, and I think I understand it pretty well. I do get up that early, and daylight probably doesn't come that early in some places, but it does in Sangerville.
In Orono, too.
You went home from the bad, huh? I met with my colleagues early this morning, and I understand their hesitation. I guess that I would move that we table this matter until the committee.
We've had a motion to table in a second. Is there any further discussion? Oh, wait, no discussion on table motion. I apologize. All those in favor of tabling? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those opposed to tabling? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The motion fails. So it remains before us. I will also say that this item has been on our agenda for months, and every single meeting we come here and we ask Director Ashcroft, has the letter arrived? Have you heard anything? Yesterday when the letter arrived, Director Ashcroft got it out to the committee, and I think we are a committee that has had this on our minds. We have met with Judge Wathen, we've met with Blue Ribbon Commission, and I will say, as a chair of the committee who has gone out of her way enormous number of times to make sure we have a lot of communication in advance of these meetings, it is disconcerting to me that this request wasn't made yesterday, knowing this was on the committee agenda. And I will say that that's a disappointment to me, where I think I've been very available. And so has Representative Kruger, Senator Cates, and then Representative Harville.
Two things, Madam Chair. First of all, sorry to make a quick request yesterday, but again, it just wasn't on my radar until last night. And secondly, I do have a question through the chair that would inquire at what time Representative Davis goes to sleep at night.
It's a real, or maybe he hasn't gone to bed yet. If it's 3:30 in the morning, and if he chooses to answer, I'll let him.
He's ready for bed.
Yeah. Representative Davis, do you want to weigh in on before I go to Representative Harville?
I fail to see of what concern it is to the senator.
I agree with you. Representative Harville, you're next.
Well, I wasn't up at 3:30 reading this. I'm 3 cups of coffee into it, and I'm ready to go. I thought if these guys wanted to table it, giving it to them, but I'm ready to roll.
Thank you, Representative Harville. And I will say again, for the purposes of the committee, this is not a conversation we're going to start and finish today. We have the benefit of having a staff that has been engaged in this conversation for months, and it makes sense to me, whether those of us who have read it once, twice, more than 3 times, or not at all, to have the benefit of the staff here, particularly where our next meeting we know is going to be dominated by the Health Humane Partnerships discussion, and it may not be possible for us to take this up again until the end of March, which is 4 weeks away. So I think it makes sense for us to have the director walk through the letter, and then we will move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So actually, rather than just me verbally walking you through the letter, we did prepare, and this isn't this is not a PEGA's perspective on the letter. What we have done is summarized the major points made in the letter, and that's what you have behind tab 6. Those main points being a little bit of background, that the U.S. Department of Labor did conduct a fact-finding review on the first-level appeals component of the Maine's Unemployment Compensation Program. That review was prompted by a combination of factors that you are all well aware of at this point, and their review included a case file review of appeals records and a series of interviews and document reviews is what they undertook. The overall conclusion from their review is that they suggest there are legitimate concerns about the practices in Maine's first-level appeal hearings and important questions about how and whether those practices, particularly with regard to certain evidentiary standards and the failure to assign value to, as precedent to second-level appeal decisions, whether those comply with federal U.S. hearing requirements. I believe you heard some of those same concerns from Judge Wathen as a result of the Blue Ribbon Commission's work. Additionally, there was evidence, they felt, that suggested that even before the governor's direct participation on March 21st, there were political appointees in the Maine Department of Labor that had intervened in hearings, operations, and quasi-judicial decision-making, and that those actions might be perceived as biased toward employers, thus endangering the fair hearing process. And the review concluded that hearing officers, therefore, might have also interpreted the expectations communicated by the governor on March 21st as pressure to be more sympathetic to employers. The case review yielded no statistical evidence to indicate that the meeting of March 21st had had an immediate impact on decision-making by the Maine hearings appeals officers. The review, coupled with information of the case files, coupled with information from interviews, did suggest reasons for concern, that there might be outlying implications from that, and that was going to warrant continued attention from the U.S. Department of Labor over time. So they were going to be, in addition to their regular monitoring of the performance of the Unemployment Compensation Program here in Maine, we're going to be paying particular attention to that going forward. They did have several actions that they felt ought to be taken to address the concerns that they raised in their fact-finding and ensure the integrity of impartial hearings process, and therefore they encouraged the state to take several steps. One was that Maine should review the state statutes, regulations, and practices and consider whether the evidentiary practices and what could be considered as evidence was appropriate, and you had quite a discussion with Judge Wathen about that. That is also a direct issue that came out of the Blue Ribbon Commission, and he described that to you, I think, quite well at the time regarding the hearsay or not use of hearsay or not use of hearsay evidence in this process. Also, another action that Maine should establish uniform standards for inclusion of agency documents in the case file and determine the weight those documents should be given under those evidentiary law practices. Also, that there was, I guess in the past, a group of officials that had been meeting that were stakeholders in the unemployment program. Those officials included officials from the Maine Department of Labor, the Unemployment Insurance Commission, the Maine Attorney General's Office, and the Federal Department of Labor strongly suggests that they resume negotiations to talk through what these evidentiary and practice issues how they should be addressed. Also, that the Maine Attorney General should identify and the Department of Labor and the UI Commission should implement improvements in the appeals process to achieve greater consistency with state law and fairness and integrity in the program. And lastly, that the governor and his appointees should ensure that the appeals process is insulated from outside pressures that might compromise even the appearance of fairness and impartiality. And to ensure that hearing officers are free from actual or perceived intimidation, and to make clear that there will be no personnel action taken against any hearing officers over this matter. Again, we noted that several of the findings and recommendations from the federal review are similar to those reported to you and others as a result of the Blue Ribbon Commission.
Thank you, Director Ashcroft. Are there any questions for the Director about the summary? Seeing none, Representative Kruger. Since you brought the initial request to us forward last April.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say, as the originator of this complaint, that, and I said this when we presented the complaint, that we're interested in finding facts, sorting rumors out, and those questions related to responsible governance. The governor charged bias. His Blue Ribbon Commission found none, and now the Federal Department of Labor Solicitor General found none. But I think there are still more facts that need to be found, and any talk of legal or political action today is premature. And we want and need the Government Oversight Committee to stay above those battles. So I'm really just interested in pursuing some facts and getting to where we were when we started this. And we delayed our action because of the other two inquiries, and now those other two inquiries are complete, and I think it's time to take a look with our staff. And the outcome isn't going to be a judicial settlement of any kind. It's going to be a decision on how to maximize government accountability, which is right there in our name.
Thank you, Representative Kruger. Representative Harville.
Thank you. I'm pretty satisfied with reading both these reports. In fact, the federal letter might have come back saying thanks, but no thanks. 80% of their recommendations came almost directly from the Blue Ribbon Commission. In fact, it looks to me like they cut and pasted half of it there, where the entirety of the problem seems to have been evidentiary hearings at the first tier level, where it led to a $45 million overpayment to the unemployment insurance decision. I can tell you, as a worker at a paper mill for 30 years, where my employer has been paying into this, I'm glad that this governor, or any governor, that would protect that safety net, particularly with what's going on in the paper industry in this country and in this state. And I wish that the federal government had shared the same concern until this was brought to them. But when you look at it, there's 5 complaints made back, 5 suggestions back. 4 of them deal with exactly the same thing we heard, which was evidentiary hearing over and over again at these levels. And the one thing which, and it's, you know, the governor probably overstepped his bounds there somewhere. I'm not suggesting maybe he didn't, but there's no evidence it came to anything. In fact, I'm quite upset it didn't. That they didn't, that there wasn't some rehearing about how they're hearing this evidence, how they're ruling on this evidentiary hearing that led to $45 million of workmen's compensation fund and the safety net for workers of this state. I find it troubling.
Thank you, Representative Harville. Yes, Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps we're not reading the same report here, but it seems to me that the observation of both the Blue Ribbon Commission and this letter are saying that there was no bias in the process, that mistakes in judgment we consider to be mistakes because upon review and appeal they were reversed, occurred in both directions in equal quantity. It seems to me that what we've got is a system that needs to make the improvements suggested regarding rules of evidence and procedure, that we need to figure out what to do in our statutes to ensure that, as they observed here, there are not actions that are biasing or creating a perception of bias in the process. And so we need to tackle both of those, and I think that that's something appropriate for this Commission's work, PAGA, to take on.
We certainly will have more conversation about this. Are there further comments? Representative Cotta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe I was blocking Representative Harville. I'd like to speak after him if he has comment.
Will you go run that? If you're deferring to Representative Harville, if you'd like to take that.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
After reading these reports, the fact that there was $45 million in overpayments doesn't imply bias, but it implies that the failure was on the side of overpayments, not on the payments back. And that's every single one of these reports is saying that it's involved around what was considered hearsay evidence at the first level, where the written records of employers were almost fundamentally dismissed because they didn't understand hearsay evidence, as the judge pointed out when he came here before. This is what is trying to be corrected by everything that's done. It wasn't $45 million, then whoops, we didn't pay out enough. It was $45 million and we paid out too much.
Thank you. Representative Cotta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having read the reports and realizing, it's very clear that there were two different parties here as far as the process for handling the evidence. And I think that the chief executive, what I'm gathering out of this, brought them together to try and iron out, and it's highlighted in the report, that they were looking at things differently to get them on the same sheet of music. And from what I read in the report, I would actually say the chief executive, not only does he have the authority, but he has the responsibility and the obligation, if there seems to be some inconsistency within an agency to which he is the boss. He is the overseer. So by recognizing that discrepancy and bringing them together to iron out exactly how they handle evidence, I think is commendable. I don't know of any changes afterwards or that were dramatic turns in the administrative law as a result of this meeting. So I really think in this particular case, he should be commended for doing it as his responsibility as the chief executive. That's my position.